Hi everyone, welcome to Still Single, helping single Christian women find contentment, joy, and hope in their single season. So, I've been away because basically, just a quick update, I've been sick. So, I was sick maybe 3 weeks ago. So, I do try to make a video every week along with a blog. So, matching video, matching blog. But I've been sick, and then once you're sick, you still have to kind of catch up on other things. So yeah, so that's that. So I wrote this blog. I wrote this blog a couple of weeks ago, and then I'm feeling to do a video now for it. So I'm just gonna get into it. And obviously, once again, I always read from my phone to help aid me. So yeah, so the title of this video is God Bring Husbands Out of Nowhere. And to be honest, I wrote this blog in September, but then I was like, I don't even know what made me not release it, but I wrote in September and I was like, I think I just had other things to share. And then when I was sick, I was like, okay, let me release it. And then I think it got quite a few likes on Instagram, and quite a few people read the blog as well, probably more than some of my other blogs. So it's quite interesting what people sort of engage in. But anyway, so this is an interesting story. So basically, I serve on a host team at church, and my leader was joking with me. He's an older white man and in his 50s, and he jokes a lot anyway. And he was like to me, just out of the blue, it was just me and him waiting by the doors, and out of the blue he was like, no boyfriend, no husband, no partner. And I was like, so that sort of and I laughed, and he was like, why are you laughing? And I was like, I've just given you a Sarah laugh. And he was like, so what do you mean? I think he wasn't registering what I meant by Sarah. And then so that was that. And then he was just being silly. So this guy walks past, and he he what did he do? He basically once the guy had walked past, he was dragging me towards him. So he was just joking like that. And normally if it came from the mouth of someone else, I'd be like, why are you doing that? But obviously with him, he's just a jokey person and he means well. So then in that moment, literally maybe less than 5 minutes later, this is shaking, maybe less than 5 minutes later, an older white man, one of our regular members, brings to me this guy, and he's like, have you met, I'll say, David? And I was like, and he was like, he brings David, and David is new, and he's like, David is new, have you met him? And I'm like, hi David, nice to meet you. And in that moment, yeah, I was like, this guy that our member brought, I was like, this is my type to the T. And I was like, this guy is my type. And his appearance at church was all the more unusual because our church has a particular type of person. I'm not going to go into it, type of people and stuff. And he's just out of someone I wouldn't normally see on a Sunday. So then I was like, I felt like in that moment, God was telling me, see, I still do miracles. God is like, I still do miracles. And God was like, I bring husbands out of nowhere. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. And it's funny because in that moment, my leader, my first response was my truest response. I'm just like, oh, that scoff is it's always, because with singleness, it's a long journey. It's not an easy one if you're single for a long time. And then no one's going to lie and say that hopelessness isn't a thing. That's why we're still single. I'm contentment, joy, and hope. I'm always contentment, joy, and hope. I always forget the order. And fun fact is I always mix the two, the joy and hope. So if you listen to my videos, I'm always mixing up joy and hope, or hope and joy. And I have it in an order in order for a particular reason, because I feel like it starts with contentment, then it starts with joy, and then it's hope. I hope I've got it in order. But yeah, because I feel like it's you're content, then you're joyful, and then you're hopeful. So you're like, it's like an order. You have contentment. That contentment helps you be joyful, and that joy helps you be hopeful. That's how I kind of see it. So yeah, so that was that. And then, of course, like, and in that moment, yeah, I was just awestruck because I was like, I'm just here serving, like on a random Sunday, and someone is brought to me. And it wasn't even like, oh, I saw a new person across the room. It was like the Lord brought this person to me. The older white man brought him to me. He was like, have you met David? And I was like, wow, God, like, you know, I was shocked that God could work in that way. And I felt like in that moment, God wants to address hopelessness. And let this be a word to you. Like, I don't think God wants us to be apathetic about being single or be like, oh yeah, if it happens, it happens, when deep down you really want it. I think God wants to address our hopelessness. And I don't think it's a case of, you know, the thing with hopelessness is it's hope is hard to reignite it, especially every time, like, I've always felt like there's only so much. Is he my husband? Could that be the person? Like, there's only so much you can do. And over time, you get to a place of like flatness when you're like, And I'm not gonna lie to you. I encourage you guys, because I also still go through it myself, where I'm like, is this gonna happen for me? Like, you know. So yeah. So that was God Bring Husbands out of nowhere. And then another thing I was gonna say about that is, back to the story. So then that day, I was like, because I'm on the host team, I kind of have an excuse to talk to whoever I want to talk to and not seem forward. Not that I'm a forward person anyway. So that day, obviously, even though one of our members brought him to me, he took him away. And I was like, God, like, at least let the man stay here and talk to me. And I was like, so what's the point of you bringing your so-called miracle or your so-called I still do miracles and then take the guy away? And then funny thing is, that same Sunday, this guy was just like, people were talking to him. And I was just like, so I've now missed my chance. And I'm like, God, what are you doing? Why do you dangle something in front of me and then take it away? But yeah, even though like that Sunday nothing happened or no interaction really, nothing really came from that interaction, I still was in awe of God, because it was a clear like day, it was a clear sign from God. And even just the timing of everything, to stand there, have that conversation, and then somebody he's obviously not in our church, to be brought to me, and we do have other people hosting, to be brought to me in particular. I was like, wow, God, you really caught that. And it reminded me of Sarah, where God was like, you laughed, and she was like, no, I didn't. And God is like, I catch every small thing that you do, every little type of doubt, every little type of hopelessness, every little type of a lack of faith. God catches it and he wants to address it. So just for you, in terms of your hope and your hope in singleness and in getting married, like, take it to God, I think, because he sees it. He really sees it. And it's funny because I feel like, don't get me wrong, yeah, I want to make it clear that our ultimate hope is Christ, you know? Like, it's a living hope. It never dies. It's not a hope where you're like, oh, it might happen, or this might, because I think hope is used very loosely in our lives. That's our main hope, of course, you know? And I think that's the guarantee. So every time I'm like hoping in something, I'm like, anyway, the greatest hope is Christ. So always remember that. But I do think that God wants to challenge our hopelessness in singleness. I don't think he wants us to coast. He wants to challenge it. Let me just quickly go back onto this blog and see if there's anything I've missed. Let me see. Yeah, this is what I wanted to say. So, you know, our faith, yeah, is based on a miracle. And there's a song by Hillsong Worship called That's the Power. And there's a line in that song and it says, every prayer I make is on an empty grave. We make prayers based on the fact that Jesus died and resurrected. Our whole faith is based on a miracle. So of course God does miracles. And I know that, you know, I'm not saying, we know that not everything we want happens in our lives, definitely. But the thing is, our faith should constantly be triggered on the basis of there's so many miracles in our faith through the Bible and the miracles that Jesus performed, the miracles that God performed in the Old Testament. But ultimately, the greatest miracle and the greatest thing our faith stands on is the fact that Jesus rose from the dead. And then there's a book called I Believe in Miracles by Catherine Coleman. And I don't know if you've heard of Catherine Coleman. She was like she had like a healing ministry, I think in the 50s, probably 50s, or maybe even 40s. So she would heal a lot of people. And then in her book, she writes this quote, and it's such a good quote. And it says, the validity of the Christian faith rests on a supreme miracle, the cornerstone on which the whole superstructure of Christianity rises or falls depends on the truth of this miracle, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. If this be false, confesses Apostle Paul, the whole structure fails, and it is then, surely, as he says, our preaching is in vain, our faith is also in vain. So yeah, so with this, once again, it's reinforcing the fact that we have to believe in miracles because our whole faith is a miracle. So if you're here thinking, where is this husband going to come out from? This shaking, because I've basically put, I've put my phone on my laptop and I've lifted it on like pillows. This is what happens when you don't have a tripod or a stand. I'm doing it the cheap way. So yeah, that's where our faith lies, on the miracle of Jesus Christ resurrecting. And I think, you know, if there's anything you take from this message, God brings husbands out of nowhere. Some of you guys might be in churches where there's no one. God brings husbands out of nowhere. Some of you might be in like that, you might be the only single person in your church and everyone is married. God brings husbands out of nowhere. And even if you're watching this message and maybe you're in a relationship or wherever you're at, just know, that God can do anything. And I know it's basic. Yes, it's basic, but he can do anything. And he wants you to know that. And I think it's so easy to kind of be in the faith. I'm sometimes in the faith, and 2 years ago, I was like, maybe like a year ago, I was like, I feel like I know what God can do. Like, you know, he does the same, like he kind of does the same kind of things in my life. There's nothing that I'm like, oh, I never knew God can do that. But then each year, I'm always in awe of the different things that he does and the different miracles that he does. So I hope this message encourages you. Share it, read the blog, encourage somebody else with it. But once again, God brings husbands out of nowhere. Take care. Bye.